Welcome and enjoy the show. Whispers in the camera roll. I've been a skeptic my whole life. Ghosts, demons, the supernatural, it was all just excuses for things we didn't understand. Or that's what I thought until my cell phone started acting up last week. It all began when my old college buddy, Mike, sent me a random message asking if I ever sorted through our road trip photos from years back. We had taken hundreds of pictures during our travels, most forgotten in the abyss of my digital archives. Curious, I scrolled way back on my camera roll to the time period he mentioned and started thumbing through the page. There were plenty of memories there, but nothing unusual. Until I came across a photo that I had had no recollection of taking. It was an image of an old gas station we had stopped at. Nothing remarkable, except the timestamp. It was dated 2 days ago. I chuckled, assuming it was a glitch, and swiped to the next photo. But the image I saw made my blood turn cold. This one was of my bedroom, taken from the foot of my bed while I was sleeping. The timestamp once again showed a recent date. I live alone. Then the whispers started. At first, I believed they were faint echoes from my neighbors or maybe even the wind, but they grew sharper, almost as if someone was quietly speaking just behind me. No one was ever there when I turned around. I tried rationalizing what was happening. I checked my phone for malware, changed all my passwords, even did a factory reset, but the photos kept reappearing, each one closer to the present moment, each one more intimate than the last. In the whispers, they started to form words that seemed nonsensical but filled me with dread I couldn't explain. I contacted Mike, and he said he was just joking about the photos. I had never shared them with him, and he'd never seen them. Knowing I needed to escape, I booked a hotel room out of town. One night, in the sterile hotel room, I hoped for respite. Instead, I woke from a shallow sleep to the glare of my phone screen illuminating the darkness. Squinting against the light, I saw my camera roll was open, filled with new photos. Photos of me sleeping taken moments ago from within the room. I was alone, the door locked, no sign of intrusion. Terrified, I called the front desk for security. But when they arrived, the photos were gone, replaced with innocuous images of the hotel parking lot. The guards left, chuckling about the scared guest. After they left, the whispers returned, now clearly a voice, chanting my name over and over. They were coming from my phone, yet it lay on the table, powered off. I could feel it crawling in my brain, a primal fear seizing control. I don't know how, and I don't know why, but these whispers, they seem to know me. As I'm typing this, the camera on my phone flickers on and off, and I swear I can see shadows shifting within its lens. I don't know what will happen next, but I need to share this. If you're reading this and understand what's happening to me, please tell me what to do. I can't tell if I'm making new memories or if the whispers are writing them for me. The whispers became more incessant, more demanding. They flooded my dreams with images of places I didn't recognize and people I'd never met. Faces twisted in horror, crying for help I couldn't give. Was the phone somehow capturing these images from my nightmares, or was it dictating them? I tried to get rid of the device. I threw it in the lake on the edge of town, but the next morning it was back on my bedside table, dry as a bone and with no sign of damage. The camera blinked as if it had an eye of its own watching. I started feeling like I was being followed, not just by the whispers, but by something palpable, a presence that loomed just on the edges of my vision. I'd whip around to catch it, but there was nothing, just the lingering sensation of being watched, and sometimes a cold spot in the air where it seemed something had just been. As the days progressed, I stopped going out. My phone was no longer just a device. It had become an appendage, an extension of the unseen force that haunted me. My camera roll was now full of images that chilled me to the core. Shadowy figures standing over my bed, my own face contorted in sleep, unaware of the silent observer. My friend started asking if I was okay, said that I hadn't been myself lately. How could I explain that I was terrorized by my own phone, by whispers that no one else could hear? One evening, in a moment of relative silence, I dared to ask a question into the void that surrounded me. What do you want from me? The answer, when it came, was a picture message. An image of a decrepit house I'd never seen before in real life, but one I recognized instantly from my dreams. The whispers all at once chorused coordinates, latitude and longitude that pointed to an isolated spot just outside of town. Led by a mixture of fear and desperate curiosity, I went to the address the whispers had given me. The house was exactly as it appeared in the photo and in my nightmares. Its windows were darkly staring eyes, the door ajar like a crooked mouth. It emanated an air of decay. I stepped inside the threshold, the whispers now silent, and my phone vibrated with life. Picture after picture flooded my screen, each one a moment from my past, mixed with snapshots of the decrepit house over time. It was as if my entire life had somehow centered around this place. The final photo was of me standing at the doorway just moments before. But behind me in the photo was a figure, a dark, indiscernible shape, but with a peculiar familiarity. I turned around, and face to face with nothing but the empty room, my phone emitted a final whisper, loud and clear. "Welcome home." The last thing I remember before passing out was the sound of the camera shutter and the sensation of falling. When I awoke, I was lying in my own bed, with no recollection of leaving the house. My phone was back on the bedside table, and when I checked it, there was only one new photo. It was a picture of me, sprawled on the floor of the old house. But this time, there was no shadowy figure. The message was clear. Whatever was haunting me wasn't in the phone or in that house. It was me all along.
The shadows that follow. I need your help. Something is happening to me and I can't explain it. I've always been a skeptic, but I can't ignore the shadows anymore. It started a week ago when I moved into an old Victorian house. The realtor assured me it was a steal, but I should have known better. The moment I stepped through the creaking front door, I felt an eerie chill. The first night was normal. However, on the second night, I saw a shadowy figure in the corner of my room. I dismissed it as a trick of the light, but the figure grew more defined each night. A tall, dark silhouette that stood silently at the foot of my bed. I tried to capture it on camera, but my phone malfunctioned every time. Friends suggested it was stress or lack of sleep, but I knew what I saw. The figure seemed to mock me, lurking just beyond my peripheral vision. I researched the house's history and discovered a disturbing secret. A previous owner, a recluse, had vanished without a trace. Locals whispered about a curse, and the more I dug, the darker the tale became. Last night, the shadows took a new form. As I lay paralyzed, I heard a child's laughter echoing through the halls. The temperature dropped, and a voice whispered, "Why did you come here?" Panic set in as the laughter grew louder, echoing in my mind. Today, I sought the help of a paranormal investigator. As he explored the house, his equipment malfunctioned, and he grew visibly uneasy. He claimed the spirits were angry, and the shadows were not mere apparitions, but malevolent entities feeding off fear. I don't know what to do. The investigator left, terrified, advising me to leave. But I can't escape. The shadows follow me everywhere, watching, waiting. I can feel their presence closing in. Update: the investigator's warning was right. The shadows have become more aggressive. Last night, they formed a circle around my bed, closing in like vultures sensing death. I screamed for them to leave, but the air grew thick with their malevolence. Sleep is elusive, and when it comes, nightmares plague my every moment. I see the missing owner, a ghostly figure, beckoning me to join them in the shadows. Their whispers echo through the house, promising eternal torment if I don't leave. I contacted a priest, hoping for an exorcism. He arrived, solemn and skeptical. As he recited prayers, the temperature plummeted, and the house seemed to groan. The shadows recoiled temporarily, but as the last words left the priest's lips, they returned with a vengeance. Desperation consumed me. I reached out to a psychic who claimed to communicate with spirits. She arrived, her eyes widening as she entered the house. The shadows seemed to recoil in her presence, but her face twisted into a horrified expression. "There's something ancient here, something beyond my control," she whispered, fear evident in her voice. "You can't escape. They're attached to you." I begged for a solution, but she left without answers. The shadows linger, an oppressive force that whispers malevolent secrets, revealing my darkest fears. I fear sleep, but I fear wakefulness more, for in the light, the shadows take on a corporeal form. Final update: I'm writing this in desperation, knowing the shadows are closing in. I've tried everything, but they won't release their grip. I can't leave. They follow me wherever I go. Their whispers grow louder, tormenting my sanity. As I write this, I can feel them behind me, breathing down my neck. The room is cold, and the air is thick with dread. I don't know what awaits me when I finish, but I need someone to know my story. If you're reading this, don't dismiss the shadows. Don't underestimate the darkness that lurks in the corners of our reality. I tried to fight, but they are stronger. I can hear them laughing, taunting as they consume me. I can't escape.
Me and my friends went in the woods looking for a monster. We think it followed us back out, part 1. In series. I am posting this because I need some answers. And I thought that you folks, especially any of you that recognize what I'm talking about, could help figure out what the fuck is happening. And yes, my friends are aware that I'm posting this now with all that preliminary bullshit out of the way. Here is what happened. So I live in a small town in the rural East Coast. The place is actually not that bad. The town is small, but it's not so small that everyone is probably related to each other, you know? Anyways, my friends and I met in middle school, and we all go to the same high school now since there is only one in the entire town. One of my friends is Avery, a short blonde girl with glasses, super shy, gets straight, but thinks she's stupid. I think you know the type. Then there's Devon, a lanky guy with long dark hair, may or may not do drugs, acts like he's the smartest when we all know his dumb ass would have flunked if it weren't for Avery helping him out with work. Still a pretty chill dude all in all. Lastly, there is Martha, a tall redhead who's built like a lumberjack, obsessed with cars, acts like an older sister, and I'm pretty sure Avery has a crush on her. We usually hang out every day at lunch and after school. We usually take walks in the woods behind the school. The one thing we have in common is we all appreciate nature. Speaking of, our town is surrounded by a thick, dark forest. I mean, the thing is huge, and cutting right through that forest, near the town, is a river. The river is probably 40 feet wide at its widest point, and maybe like 18 feet at its deepest. Now, this wasn't always a river. It used to be a small creek, and some pioneers found some gold in it and decided to set up a town along the creek. But a few miles up the creek was a huge rock cliff. Above it is where the creek started. So the pioneers had the genius idea to go to the cliff and blow it the fuck up. This caused more water to flow, thus turning the small creek into a big river. Like I said, our town is surrounded by forest, and so eventually someone will see something strange moving between the trees. This is probably how the legend of the beast was started. Where do I even start with the beast? The beast is our local cryptid, you could say. The beast is to my town what the Mothman is to Point Pleasant. It's the best way I could describe it. He's not super popular outside of town, but he's a damn celebrity here. Pretty much everyone here knows about him. We even have a souvenir shop dedicated to the beast, since the only reason any tourists come here is either to see the beast or if they're coming down the river. We even named our high school football team after him. The legend states that he was first sighted by some miners after some equipment was broken and some of the miners went missing. When the other miners went searching for the lost ones, they found some strange footprints, but eventually they gave up and went home. Then about a few weeks later, some local farmer was woken up from his nap by a loud crashing in the barn. So he got up, grabbed his shotgun, and went to the barn expecting a coyote or a burglar, but when he opened it instead and found, would you have guessed, his wife fucking the farmhand. The farmer, rightfully pissed, took some shots in the air and scared off the farmhand before then leaving the barn and sitting on the porch. As the farmer was sitting on the porch, watching the farmhand quite literally run for the hills, he noticed a large dark shape stalking him from just beyond the tree line. It kept following the farmhand till he was over the nearby hills, after which it charged from out of the woods in pursuit. The farmer went to the town hollering about some monster that he saw. Some took him seriously, and most laughed at him. All they knew was that the farmhand was never seen again. The farmer would remarry, have 5 kids, and would never see this creature again. This farmer was my great-grandfather, and I learned all of this from my dad. So one day me and my friends are shooting the shit at our main spot, this huge concrete building right beside the river. It had these large storage rooms, each with 9-inch thick steel doors. Apparently this place was used to store the explosives used by the miners. The doors were there in case anything blew up prematurely, or at least this is what Avery told me. So we're all sat there talking about school, people we hate, the usual shit kids our age talk about, not necessary for what I'm telling you. So Avery is reading a book. Devon's trying to make a spark from smashing bits of concrete together. Martha's using sharpened bits of concrete to make knives out of sticks. And I'm sitting there talking shit about this one absolute fucking dictator of a teacher. This goes on until Devon suddenly perks up and says he has an idea. So y'all know I'm taking history, right? And right now we're learning about the history of the town. And so we just started an assignment about the town's legends. Mainly the one about the beast. That's pretty cool, I guess. Responds Avery, still with her head buried in her book, not really paying attention. Exactly right. So we're talking about the different areas where the beast has been cited, different evidence from it. Shit like that, stuff that Op is into. He responds while looking at me. What are you getting at then? I asked Devon. Well, I just remembered that around this building was where they found some evidence of it, and even saw the beast, Devon responded with. I now knew what he was getting at now, and it was a bad idea. First off, we don't have a map, so we could easily get lost. Second, whatever evidence they got from there was probably fake or misidentified. And third, why the hell are you even interested in going to this place? Last I checked, you didn't give a shit about urban legends. I told this to Devon, who just looked at me defeated. Then Martha stops her whittling and turns to me and Devon. Wait, are we going to look for the beast? She asked in a clearly excited tone. That actually sounds like fun, exclaimed Avery in agreement with Martha. God damn it, Avery, you fucking simp. Devon then looked at me with a smug look of victory. Martha reached into her backpack and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. She then unfolds the paper and it doubles in size. She then gives it to Devon and asks him where the sighting was. He then points to a spot on the paper and says, right there. I was confused, so I got up behind Devon to see what was on the paper. The paper was a map of the area with the building circled in red marker. I sighed in annoyance before turning back to Martha. How long have you had that? She shrugs. Not that long. Got it from the souvenir shop. So we're going then, Devon chimes in. I sigh. I guess we might as fucking well. So with that, we left the comfort of the concrete and rust-covered ruins and headed off deeper into the woods. We were following this one trail for about an hour, Martha leading the way with Avery close behind her, me and Devon far in the back. We then started bushwhacking through the woods, off the trail. Martha had the smart idea to tie some cloth to a tree in case we got lost. So the reason we're walking through the woods now is because we need to get to a specific part of the river, a part that is inaccessible by trails or woods. Now, it's starting to get pretty dark out. If I remember correctly, it was around 6:15 when we finally reached the part of the river. This part of the river was less of a river and more of a swamp. The river broke apart and flowed through multiple crossing streams. This caused the surrounding land to become muddy, and this allowed for swamp plants to grow. Now, according to Devon, the beast was sighted like 6 times in this swamp, so we thought it would be the best place to start looking. Now, I know this sounds stupid, but we split up to cover more ground. Me and Devon went one way while Martha and Avery went another. We kept in contact through walkie-talkies that Martha always brought for games we would play at the ruins, so we were set. Me and Devon began searching through some ravines, making sure not to slip on the fresh mud and fall into the streams. The smell, my God, the smell. If you have ever walked through a swamp after a fresh rain, you know what I'm talking about. The smell of sulfur was strong. It was like we were surrounded by rotting food. Me and Devon tried our best to ignore it while we searched the area. While we did this, Martha and Avery searched the edge of this small pond that was basically just a giant getty created by the streams converging. Because of this, it is extremely dangerous to try to swim in the pond, and there are signs all around it warning of potential death. Martha called us over her walkie-talkie, "Hey guys, so we're at the death pond, and we found something weird." I respond back, really, what did you find? You know how the pond is surrounded by warning signs? Well, a bunch of them are really bent, like a car hit them or something. Devon catches this and grabs the walkie-talkie from me. Holy shit, dude, that's gotta be some evidence. Can you take a photo of them? Martha sighs over the talkie. Trust me, man. I would, but my phone's dead and Avery's is on low battery, and she doesn't want to use Devon curses. Before handing it back to me, do you want us to come over to y'all? Nah, it's all good. You guys continue searching your area. Martha responds before disconnecting. They're probably making out, you know? Devon remarks. Shut up, dumbass, I retorted. Hey, I'm just observing the situation. You ain't observing shit. Besides, you know damn well that Avery is way too chicken shit to pull something like that. Devon shrugs. I don't know, man. Love makes people stupid, even someone as smart as a very... I just roll my eyes and continue walking through the ravine. After a few minutes of finding nothing, we decided to regroup with Martha and Avery by the pond. When we arrive there, Avery and Martha are sitting on a log looking over the map. Me and Devon immediately understood what Martha was talking about with the signs. About 5 or 6 of them were bent and distorted in various directions. Mind you, the signposts were made of steel, so the only thing that could have twisted the signs like that was a car. but the swamp was surrounded by thick forest. The sight of these fucked up signs made Devin ecstatic. I was just confused, as was Devin pulled out his phone to take a picture of the signs. And after he took it, we heard a rustle in the bushes. Almost simultaneously, we turned our heads towards the thick bushes. I'll admit, I was pretty creeped out by this. I think Avery was creeped out too, but Devin and Martha were giddy, especially Devon. Devin held up his camera again while Martha slowly approached the bush. When she got within about a meter of the bush, a small rabbit bolted out of it, and this caused Martha to flinch and Avery to yelp. After this, we all began laughing at the stupidity of the situation. However, afterwards, Devin looked at his phone with confusion, then shock, then fear. And when I say fear, I am aware that damn near nothing can really scare Devon. We learned that through our... But when he looked at his phone, his face went fucking pale. I was the first to notice this and immediately walked over to him. "Hey man, are you good?" I asked while holding his shoulders. Martha and Avery got up and walked over as well, but Devin was still silently staring at his phone. "Listen man, you're freaking me out. Are you okay?" Devon finally looks up at me and turns his phone for all of us to see. Now we can see what he was looking at. It was the picture he took of the busted up signs. We didn't notice anything wrong with it. It was just of the signs and some of the forest behind them. Devin noticed this and zoomed in on a specific part of the picture. We looked closer at the picture, trying to see what Devin was trying to show. I was the first to notice it. At first, I thought it was a shadow of a tree or one of us. But as I looked closer, I realized what it was, and I felt my blood run cold. In the picture, probably 20 meters away in the distance, was a figure. It was tall, really fucking tall. Now, the bushes in the swamp were pretty damn big, maybe 5 feet tall and 7 wide. But this thing was fucking crouching, and it still stood well above them. It was covered in patches of dark gray hair that partially covered its scaly skin. The hair was tangled with various twigs and leaves, like camouflage. It had a long tail like a lizard crossed with a monkey, and its head was like a monkey's, but more reptilian. That's the best way to describe it, actually, like a reptilian primate. Anyways, I'm getting off track. So after we all noticed this fucking thing in the picture, we all damn near shit our pants. So we decided to get the fuck out of Dodge and basically sprinted back to our meetup spot at the ruins. Now, from this point on, my memory gets a little hazy, probably because of the stress of the situation. So from what I can remember, Devin started freaking out, and so did Avery, with me and Martha having to calm them down. We decided to return to our homes and try to discuss what happened in a safer environment. So we're talking about this over Discord, mainly trying to see if we had been followed back. Now, I forgot to mention this earlier, but Avery had been recording the entire trip on her phone. So she shared it with us over Discord so we could review it. We didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, so we assumed we were in the clear. We said our goodnights and logged off, but something didn't sit right with me about the footage. I just felt like something was wrong with it. So after dinner, I decided to review the footage again myself. This leads to the reason I posted this on here. When I rewatched the footage over again, I noticed that this creature showed up somewhere in every single fucking recording. Never the main focus, but always off to the side in the distance, fucking watching us. Upon seeing this, my blood froze and my hair stood on end. I was more scared at that moment than I had been in a long time. Afterwards, I immediately told all of this to the others, and they had similar reactions. Then I decided to hop on Reddit and type all of this up. So once again, I'm asking you all, if any of you know what I'm talking about, please share anything that could help.
There's something wrong with my landlord's family, and I need to go back home right now. My girlfriend recently broke up with me. I won't lie, that was the most gut-wrenching thing that ever happened to me. She basically lived in my apartment. After the breakup, she had to go there multiple times to pick stuff up, and when I thought I wouldn't be seeing her again, she appeared out of nowhere to pick another thing up. I couldn't keep doing this anymore, so I decided to take some time for myself. I searched a lot of travel destinations online and couldn't find anything that attracted me enough to actually go and rent it. If it was cheap, the place looked like garbage. If it looked good, the stay was expensive as hell. I was almost giving up on my sabbatical trip when, all of a sudden, an ad popped up on social media announcing a cottage on the woods. The place looked like it came out of a painting. It had a crystal clear lake. The trees were so green they seemed It felt like one of those AI-generated images, and it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't expensive either. This almost felt so good to be true, and maybe it was. I got there around X, Y, and Z, early a.m. I chose to keep this travel to myself and didn't warn my parents or anyone. I wanted to fully enjoy my little one-week fantasy. The cottage looked just like the pictures the landlord sent me. We talked a little after I messaged him informing I was interested in renting the place. Through the messages, you could see he was a nice guy. When I got there, the landlord was waiting right in front of the cottage with a happy grin on his face. He helped me unload the car, and it made me laugh seeing him carry a lot of heavy stuff like it was nothing. He was certainly a buff guy. He was about 6'1" and had a long beard. He told me to count on him whenever I needed something, and then informed me that he lived about half a mile from my cottage with his family. He then invited me to lunch at his place. At first, I was a little lost, but he convinced me that they would be really happy to welcome me. I had lunch with his family. The house was so silent that it was possible for you to hear your own organs working. When we sat down at the table, Simon was the only one talking, asking me superficial questions that I answered in an equally superficial way. His wife and daughter were quiet, totally still, and had blank expressions, like their body was there, but nothing more. His wife ate in silence, and his daughter only scrambled the food with a fork without actually eating anything. She had a black eye and little yellowish bruises on her arms. I tried brushing my thoughts away from it and just kept eating the food. I went back to my cottage after lunch and took a nap. When I woke up, I slowly opened my eyes, and I swear I saw someone staring at me through the window. The cottage had only one floor, so someone could spy on me if they wanted to. The figure bent down so quickly I couldn't see it. I admit I was too scared to look for it, so I just decided that it would be best to just forget it. In that same afternoon, I felt really bored and thought I could see some videos on my cell phone, but there was no signal. I walked around the house trying to get at least a bit of signal, but nothing happened. I went to Simon's house to ask him for the Wi-Fi password, and he started laughing. He proceeded to say that there was no need for Wi-Fi in the woods when there's so much to do instead of scrolling through social media. I kind of agreed with him and asked if he had any suggestions about what I should do, and he suggested fishing. He told me to go to the back of his cottage as he kept all the reeds in a shed that was unlocked. When I got to his backyard, I saw the shed and went straight towards it, but I heard a bump on the house's window. I looked towards the bump and saw what seemed to be Simon's daughter. Her nose was bleeding, and her eyes were wide open, like she'd seen a ghost. She started mumbling something, looking directly to my face. She started pointing at me, seeming desperate. I got goosebumps all over my body and realized I had to get out of there. Suddenly, Simon's daughter disappeared from the window abruptly, like if someone pulled her. I was still paralyzed, but after a few seconds, Simon showed up and asked me why I was taking so long. I smiled at him and told him I got distracted by a squirrel. I can't tell if he believed me or not, but he let it slide. We spent some while fishing, but I couldn't take my mind away from what I've just witnessed. Was she being abused? Did Simon know about what was happening? He seemed so kind at first. Maybe you'll call me stupid for this, but I ended up confronting Simon about what I saw. He looked at me, concerned, and started tearing up. He told me his daughter, Astrid, was a very sick young woman. She had some kind of schizophrenia and would constantly try hurting herself and others. He said they moved to this cottage in the middle of the woods so they could keep her safe and stop her from hurting others. I felt so bad for him and apologized for even thinking that they could be harming her. He told me not to worry. I felt honestly so bad about that family. I went to their house every day at midday so we could lunch together. Simon's wife, Catherine, even talked to me. But on the other hand, Astrid would keep her mouth shut the whole lunch and would leave the table without saying a word. After 4 days at the cottage, I started feeling really good about the place. The lack of internet stopped bothering me as I was doing a lot of manual stuff I used to do when younger, like painting and sculpting little things with clay. Simon knocked on the front door while I was drinking some coffee, so I stopped and went towards him. He told me he'd go to town with his wife to buy some more food and asked kindly if I could keep an eye on Astrid. I agreed, of course. He then gave me the keys to his cottage and told me she'd be in her bedroom. He said that if she called me, which she'd probably do, I should answer with dry and short sentences. He reaffirmed that she was mentally ill, so I should not believe her. I agreed and went to his place fast since it was almost dark. I was in the couch watching Simon's TV. The channels were all boring, but I wasn't paying attention to it anyway. I couldn't stop thinking about his daughter and how tiring taking care of her every day should be. Suddenly, I got scattered from my thoughts by a scream. I ran towards Astrid's bedroom and asked if everything was okay. When she heard my voice, she started yelling something like, "Thank God you're here." I got confused and asked her what that meant, and she told me to listen to her carefully. Astrid told me Simon and his wife kidnapped her when she was only 15, and now she's probably 20 or 21. She lived at a perfect family, and her parents loved her more than anything in the entire world. Mary and August, she said Simon abducted her in the daylight, pointing a switchblade to her neck and demanding that she got inside his truck. He then took her to the cottage and kept her locked in the same room for a long period of time, and only fed her once a day to keep her alive. Simon's wife was also a part of this. She was the one who pulled her away from the window that day. I could see she was crying. That story was too realistic for someone to just make up, and if you were there, you'd agree. Her voice trembling while she talked made my whole body freak out. I had to get her out. Going against everything Simon told me, I opened the door. She was on her knees. Her face was totally red and swollen. She then looked me in the eyes and gave a genuine smile. We sat on the ground together and planned an escape. I would tell Simon I had to leave early because of some family matters. At midday, I would come around for one last lunch and bring a glass of wine to celebrate it. But I'd pour some drops of GAG, a drug that makes you pass out. Simon had GB in the kitchen's drawer, and Astrid knew he had it because he gave it to her multiple times during these years. At first, I was absolutely terrified and just wanted to get out as soon as I could. But now my main goal was to help Astrid escape. I could see the suffering through her blue eyes and knew that she was trusting me. After Simon and his wife had passed out, I would take Astrid with me and drive her to a police station so she could finally get free. It seemed like a perfect plan. Nothing could go wrong. We heard the sound of Simon's truck engine getting close, so she hugged me quickly and kissed my cheek, thanking me another billion of times for helping her. She then got inside of the room again, and I locked the door. When Simon got in, he asked me if Astrid was behaving well, and I told him, confidently, I actually forgot she was even here. He smiled and shook my hand, thanking me for being such an angel. I faked the best smile I could and told him not to worry. The next morning, I knew what had to be done. I packed all my things and loaded them into my car without anyone noticing. I took one of my wines and opened it carefully. I took the GH in Simon's drawer last night and then poured it inside the glass. I put the cork back to its place and shook the bottle a bit. Just for safety, I took a little switchblade I had and put it inside my back pocket, just in case. Following the plan, I got there at midday holding the poisoned wine. Simon opened the door and told me they weren't expecting me to come, so his wife didn't make enough food. I told him there was no problem and that I was there to tell him I was leaving today. He quickly went from blank to sad and asked me why I was leaving so early, and I told him it was due to some family matters. He invited me in. Simon's wife heated up some lasagna from yesterday for me, apologizing for not making enough food, and I told her it was fine. I sat next to Astrid at the table, and she seemed happy. She even ate the food, something I never saw her doing before. I told Simon to get a wine opener so they could drink it, and he peacefully denied it, alleging that he and his wife didn't enjoy wine. At that moment, the whole plan fell down right to our face. I looked at Astrid from the corner of my eye, and then she simply said, "Why don't you drink it yourself?" looking deeply in my eyes. Simon looked at her and agreed, saying I deserved a sip since I've been so helpful to the family. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I said I shouldn't drink because I was going to face the road soon so I could get back home. Simon denied it, saying he would only let me leave after sipping it. I started sobbing and begging him to stop. Astrid looked at me and wiped my tears with her thumbs and then held my cheeks. She pouted, smiled, and whispered, "I like the way you're brittle and naive." After that, Simon took the wine and shattered it against my forehead. I woke up in some sort of shed, and I figured out it must be the shed where he kept the reeds. I was sitting down shirtless, tied up to a metallic pole, and couldn't move. I tried screaming, but I don't think someone heard me. It was just me and this fucked up family. I reunited all the strength I had left and stood on my feet, struggling and trying to untie the rope that was wrapping my hands together, but I failed. I started looking around, trying to find any object that could help me escape this hell, but all of the tools were too far from me. Suddenly, I remembered about the switchblade I had inside my back pocket. I rubbed my back against the pole, trying to feel if it was still there or if they took it from me, but I could feel it. I tried reaching it with my tied hands, but I couldn't, no matter how hard I squirmed. The shed's door opened, and the 3 family members were wearing black covers and animal masks, but each mask was different. One was a lion, one was a deer, and the other one was a wolf. I felt like I was in some kind of disturbing horror movie, but it was real. The one with the lion mask, which I suppose was Simon, had a leather bag. He opened it and started taking candles out, making a circle around me. The other 2 just got on their knees while Simon did all the work. I was still on my feet, flabbergasted. I couldn't even cry. My body was filled with adrenaline, so I kept wiggling, trying to reach my switchblade. "It's too late now," said Simon. "It was nothing personal. You just ended up being an easy prey. Your body will be used as a sacrifice, since you proved to be a good person by agreeing to help Astrid. But don't get me wrong, if you refused to help her, you'd still be murdered, but in a much brutal, bloody way. He will eat you slowly. First, he'll whoop your eyes out, then your tongue. Rip your nose and ears off. He will then gut your scalp, then your skin. Nothing will be thrown away. He'll use everything. You should feel pride for serving such an honorable entity. Your sacrifice will keep our family alive for another century." While he said these harsh words, I threw up more than once. The graphic details he gave me were too much to handle. I got a lot of involuntary spasms. But then, I noticed something. The spasms were strong enough to loosen up the rope that wrapped my hands. So I was getting closer to my back pocket, but tried making it stealthy so that none of the family members would notice. "Please, Azazel, accept our sacrifice," yelled Simon, and the other 2 repeated it. Simon started lighting up all the candles around me, and they started heating my feet up so much it throbbed. They came closer, and with a little blade, Simon started to write something on my chest. The pain I felt was so sharp, and I started squealing. I kept struggling, but Simon's wife and Astrid would hold me whenever I started moving too much. I was still trying to reach my switchblade, and after some seconds, I reached it. In a moment of pure despair, I looked at the ground and felt my feet burning. Then, I did something out of pure instinct. I started kicking all the candles. Immediately, the candles started burning the hay that was on the ground, and also their covers. They all started screaming, and I took my opportunity. I held the switchblade in a position where the blade rubbed against the rope and started sawing it. Everything inside the shed was on fire since it was made out of wood and hay. They were looking for a way out. Suddenly, a part of the wooden roof gave up and fell on Simon's wife, who screamed in agony until I couldn't hear her scream anymore. While she struggled, I was able to cut the rope entirely, making me free. I ran towards the exit, but Astrid jumped over me and started hitting me with a wooden bat multiple times. The wooden was rotten, so it wasn't able to do much. I held the switchblade with all the force I had and slit her throat. Blood gushed all over my face and body, making my vision completely red. She didn't die instantly, but she eventually would. I threw her body on the ground and kicked her throat one last time, making her head detach from her torso. There was blood and fire everywhere. I started looking around trying to find Simon, and I saw him standing right next to his wife's body, trying to wake her up desperately. I saw that as the perfect moment and ran away towards the shed's exit. I was able to make it out alive, but most of my body had third-degree burns. I ran towards my car and started it as fast as I could, and when I looked behind me, I saw Simon standing in front of the shed, looking directly at me. I hit the gas with all my might, causing the car to skid, but it eventually came back under control. I followed the same road that led me here, and tears of joy rolled through my cheeks. I got out alive. At first, I thought I was safe, but after 15 minutes on the road, I ran out of gas. I was in the middle of nowhere, but at least I had a little bit of signal. I immediately called the cops, explaining my situation. They said that a police car was on its way towards me, but I'm sitting here for nearly 3 hours now, and no one came to pick me up, and it's starting to get dark. I'm freezing cold. My chest hurts because of what Simon has written with the blade. Azaz. Only the word Azaz. It probably meant Azazel, the demon he was trying to feed me to, but I started the fire before he could finish it. I'm trying to keep calm, but I can't stop thinking about Simon standing up in front of the burning shed, staring at me. He was still alive, and he probably was coming after me. I just hope the cops will find me before he does. If someone's reading this, please never rent a cottage in the middle of nowhere, especially when you're alone. I think I see a light approaching my car. It's probably the police. Weird, I could have sworn the police siren's colors were blue and red.